Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast summer series. Hello, Ben. How are you?
G'day, mate. How you going?
Pretty good. You settled into the new year?
Settled in. That's, there's something about this year, right? Just feels good.
Yeah.
Just feels better than the past. But I've always said that. I've always been a believer that life just gets better and better and better until you get to my age.
Well, mate, the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. At your age, you can only get better at your age, can't you? I mean, you've got that many runs on the board. Surely you've got to kick in soon, don't you?
Oh, you'd like to think I get some wisdom somewhere down the track. That's what I'm hoping for, anyway.
Hey, so just quietly, Ben. 2021. Right, and I believe your date of birth has a 1 in it.
Yeah, 71. So that does make me
the big 50 Kingsley.
Fitty later on in the year.
Wow,
Fitty,
I didn't realise I knew anyone that old. But
50 cents. I'll be fitty. Yeah.
Well, there you go, mate. Well, it's clearly a big year for you. So
fit in, ready to check out. Just ready to check out and
already
ride into the sunset. Job done at Fitty.
Well, we better enjoy this summer series, mate, because it sounds like it's your last one. But today, I can tell you that we've got a ripper chat with an amazing human being on a story that I think is just must listen to. That didn't roll as well as mentally it was going to, but you get the point.
Yeah, look, I think we've stumbled across a real thinker, a wise mind in a young body. So I definitely enjoyed our chat. We got a little bit of sort of philosophical in there, and sort of had this difficult conversation about people who show up and sense of entitlement versus expectation. And, so I think it's good. I like because my view on that. Like, I think we Australians can get a little bit complacent.
Yeah.
But we can see the people who come here who want to make good, and they can do it, right? And so if we don't show up and help them get there, then we're also going to be left behind. So I definitely liked what Eric had to say.
Well, folks, if wisdom is your jam, strap in. You are about to listen to a very, very good interview that Ben and I had. Let's cut to it right now. Okay, Ben, we've got a very exciting guest today. I'm very excited to interview today Eric T. Welcome to the Property Couch, Eric.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
That's a pleasure. We're excited to, you wrote into us, you gave us some backstory with you and your money story. And it's really interesting. So I'm looking forward to diving in. So that our community can get to know you a bit better. Take us back to growing up in your household. Let us know what money was like and the lessons you learned from your parents.
Yeah, sure. So just to sort of introduce myself. So I'm 26, going on 27 soon. I have grown up in a fairly modest our household. My parents were first-generation immigrants to Australia. They had no networks, no friends, no family in Australia arriving here. They were the very sort of quintessential, arrive with a suitcase and $1,000 in your pocket, that sort of thing. And they just set off working. So
from where? Where from?
So they came from Portugal. They were there at the time, and I think there was some sort of immigration policy around that time. So they were able to migrate to Australia back then, and I believe in the late 70s. So growing up, we felt the squeeze of money all the time. Not having anyone to sort of back us up. They worked 16 to 18 hour days at the complete expense of, any personal sort of health and all of that. For example, my dad's got a ongoing shoulder injury and all of that sort of thing. But we grew up very modestly. Like, I'll give you an example. We never really did Christmases, birthdays, never had any sort of sporting leisure activities, never went to the movies. And like, for example, I never ate at a restaurant until I was 19. And I never went to a cinema until I was 19 as well, when I met my partner. So, you know, I never knew all of this stuff. I had to learn etiquette and all of that. But for the most part, things were scarce. I mean, I'll give you another example as well. You know, initially when they came, they used to eat on the floor because they didn't have money for a table, and just had a mattress with no bed frame. I mean, thankfully by the time I was born, you know, they had tables to eat on and all of that. But for the most part, it was, you know, earn a bit of money from work, and whatever you had, just buy the next thing and then buy the next thing, and you know, hopefully it all comes together. And from there, it just sort of became what it is today.
Now, Eric, that's an incredible sacrifice that your parents have made. I mean, ultimately, what was the trade-off, or what was the payoff for that commitment? And then I want to talk about you, but in terms of for them, obviously they were working very hard, so they're earning money, they just weren't spending it. So
Yeah.
what was the payoff for that sacrifice?
It was significant. You know, it's nothing fancy or anything, but for us, it was, as kids, and you know, I never really appreciated it until several years ago, when we sort of revisited these stories as adults, from an adult sort of frame of mind. But having a roof over our head that was ours, and we could call it ours, and there wasn't going to be a landlord to come and knock on the door and kick you out at any moment. So in that sense, our upbringing was very stable, just very modest, and to an extent insular, because they were always in this sort of constant state of battening down the hatches, that, you know, the world could collapse tomorrow. And keep in mind, they came from, you know, before they went around Europe, they came from a war-torn country that went through civil war. So they lived in mud huts and things like that. They went through some very tough times. So coming to Australia with all of this prosperity, all of a sudden, it was, you know, get what you can and to try and hold on to it. So there's this constant mindset of scarcity. But in terms of the payoff for us children, it was all towards us as kids, that, you know, give these kids, you know, a decent upbringing with a stable house, you know, put us through public school, which is perfectly fine for me. But having said that, you know, and I'm super, super, super grateful for it. I couldn't have asked for any better parents. But at the same time, as growing up and me trying to sort of be like, you know, you didn't have to work so hard you didn't have to break your backs to give us what you gave us. You know, I would have probably accepted living in a flat, you know, rather than a nice detached home back then. I would have taken anything. But that was the choice that they'd made, and it was very noble of them. And you know, I still feel continually indebted to them for giving us that upbringing that they did. It was nothing special, but it did us fine. It did us perfectly fine, and I think it's helped shape me as a person too, to, you know, not necessarily have low expectations, but to sort of appreciate what you have, and anything else on top of that is a bit of a, you know, oh, that's a nice to have.
Well, it's a phenomenal sacrifice to hear that story, and some people will relate to it, some people won't be able to relate to it because they might have been born in this country. But I think the best way that you can honour your parents is through that gratitude, and through the fact that you honour the sacrifice that they gave for you to be where you are now. My question is, were they able to make a pivot from scarcity to abundance, or do they still have some of those similar traits now, where, you know, you use the word battening down the hatches and live modest and insular lives? Does that still describe them, or are they somewhere in the middle?
I would say they've moved a little bit away from that. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say they've probably gone to a full abundance mindset that, you know, yourselves or myself might have. And that's nothing to blame them for at the same time. But I noticed the pivot for me was when I entered the workforce full-time after graduating. So all of a sudden I was now on a full-time income myself, a steady full-time income. And keep in mind, this was about 3, 4, 5 years ago. So even myself, I didn't have any of those sort of money paradigms that you guys go on about, the money smart system and all that, you know, correct way of thinking and all of that. But there was a shift in that sense. At that point in time, my mum had always said she wanted to go and do a bit of traveling overseas. And it was fun for a point in time. For example, I bought her a new phone. I did pay for a holiday, got her a few toys and things like that she had never enjoyed or had the ability to enjoy it for, the good past 30, 35, 40 years. So it was, I guess at the time I rationalized it as, this is a very small way to pay them back for what they had given us. So there was that pivot towards a bit more abundance at that point in time. I think I noticed them sort of relaxing their shoulders a little bit.
So Eric, did they ever talk about how grateful and fortunate they felt about being in a country that had political stability, that had opportunity, compared to obviously where they come from?
100%. The main thing that they were so surprised about was, for example, how generous the government was in terms of welfare and all of that, and that you could arrive in Australia and immediately just go look for a job, and if you sort of got into a bit of strife, the government would sort of be your safety net. Coming from where they came from, it wasn't like that, where there was political instability. You never knew if you were going to be robbed by the next Liberation Army or whatever it was at the time. So coming here, despite the fact that we are immigrants, there was a lot of sort of racial tension at the time as well. Maybe you guys, maybe audience wouldn't mind me mentioning, we are of Asian descent, so it was very difficult for them. They told us a few stories of the sort of things that they went through. So in a sense, it was, they appreciated it, but it presented new challenges moving to a country like Australia. It had that economic, political stability, but there were sort of other social issues as well at the time, which they weathered. They weathered, and so did I. But that's, thankfully we're a bit better these days.
Still got a bit more work to do on that front, but we're getting there, right? Next generation. Hopefully it'll we'll continue to keep building that out.
Hey Eric, can you take us back to you were 19 and you went to a movie in a restaurant for the first time? Can you describe what was going through your mind as you entered these places, and how you hadn't been there before?
It just felt wrong, if I had to be honest. It was, I'll sort of set it out for you guys. Growing up, the only thing we ever got was McDonald's, right? And we only got that once in a blue moon, Big Mac meal with fries or whatever it was. Like, I'd never been to a sit-down restaurant. We had never even, for example, gotten takeaway pizza. Never sort of experienced that thrill of seeing the delivery guy rock up and, you hand over this plastic thing that's really colourful and looks like Monopoly money, and here's some food, right? So we always saw mum making food for us, and, the amount of time it takes going to the shops, buying the ingredients, putting it together, etc., and so on. So then going to a restaurant, for me, it was like, you get sat down and you get treated well and, please and thank you and all of that. And then you point at things on a piece of paper, and then that comes out, and then you eat it, and then you don't even have to wash up your dishes, and you pay for it. It was just mind-blowing for me, but it felt wrong because I had carried some of these scarcity paradigms with me well into adulthood that only sort of became more conscious of recently to sort of undo that coding. But at the time, I did carry some of that paradigm with me, and it just felt so uncomfortable parting ways with 20, 30 bucks, whatever it was, given that I was probably earning half of that part-time at the time. So very early on, because of scarcity, I think one of your previous guests mentioned it once. No, I think it was a suggestion from a listener that, for example, if something is 50 bucks, that's not $50, it's 2 or 3 hours of work in that sense. So for me, it was, we would go out to $20, $30 lunches or whatever it was, and I would count in my head, that's 2 hours of work. Wow, it only took me 30 minutes to eat that. It just, the value proposition wasn't there for me.
So can we flow on from that? So clearly you brought some of those scarcity paradigms in. How did that manifest in your life? 19, 20, 21. You said you've pivoted, but can you talk us through what that sort of backstory meant for you as an adult, in charge of your own money, in charge of your own pay, and what were some of the choices you were making?
So basically, I was really tight with my money as well. I tried, every dollar was hard earned and, hard fought for as well. So I also tried not to spend too much. So I always had this mismatch of seeing some of the people in my age around the time who were just frivolously spending, getting this, latest sneaker drop or this latest iPhone or whatever kids like these days. And there is me with my, my 10-year-old phone and my, $20 Target shoes, which are unbranded, not really wanting to spend any of that money. So it was more the social pressure of like sort of feeling that you're being judged at a sort of subliminal level. But at the same time, I was saving, but it was I guess saving as muscle memory. There was no purpose behind it. Obviously, now that I've pivoted, I know sort of where my future goals are. So I have a motivation to save. But back then, I used to burn out quite frequently from saving for the sake of saving and not really asking the underlying question of why. It was sort of just, you assumed that was the way of life from how I was raised.
Eric, you talk about those social pressures. Did that manifest also in the playground about what you were saying before around not participating in school programs or sports or those types of things where effectively you went to school for education only, or, and as you say, you're showing up and, in some of the notes we've got here that, your mum made your clothes in a lot of sense. So was it, tell me about, were any of those social peer pressures showing up in school, or did they manifest a little bit later on?
It probably manifested later on.
Okay.
In school, I did struggle in school as well. Not to sort of turn this into a sob story, but I was bullied a little bit in school, so I sort of learned to enjoy my own company, and that, funnily enough, has sort of translated that sort of being okay with, content with your own company, has traversed into adulthood. But the social pressures, not so much as a kid. No, I think these days, if you were growing up as a kid like that, you probably would feel more of those pressures. We do have, at least from what I've noticed, we do have a bit of a sort of a toxic flex culture at the moment with, brands and, these,
image. Yeah.
Hyped up sneaker drops or whatever that people line up for 16 hours just to get a pair of shoes or whatever it is. Like, so there's a lot more emphasis on brand these days, but when I was growing up, it wasn't too bad. So I don't know if I mentioned, but this might make a little more sense. My parents worked at a clothing factory out in Brunswick in the late 80s and the 90s. So what they used to do was they used to get all the templates for all the clothes, and they used to just bring it home and make clothes for us. So, we didn't have to we didn't have to go out to Target and even pay $20 for a shirt or whatever it was. My mum just brought home the templates and made it for ourselves. And so it was fine in that sense. The one other thing, though, was, look, I did feel a bit left out sometimes, not going on the camping trips and what have you. But it was sort of in conjunction with being picked on as a kid in school. I felt a bit of anxiety going out camping anyway. So we just sort of stuck to the school day excursions or whatever it was, the Science Works or Bunnings or something like that. So it wasn't too bad for me growing up. But as an adult, I definitely felt more of that social pressure.
Yeah. You talked about, and I wish we could sort of lean into the bullying and how we could overcome that, but I think that's a rabbit warren which would take us down a totally different path. But it's not okay that you were bullied, but that's your backstory. The desire. I'm interested to know, you've saved for the sake of saving, and then at some point you burnt out for the sake of saving. What was the pivot that got you to think, well, there's got to be more to saving than just saving? What was the spark that sort of changed that path?
Well, I looked at property prices because my parents always ingrained in us that you need to buy a house in the future for your future family. So then I would just do the very sort of unskilled median price of X suburb next door, or wherever, and realestate.com.au would pop up, and you'd see these prices, with 6 digits and commas in them, and you look at that, and then I would look at how much I was making per hour, and I go, this is enough. At least the way things are currently going. So I think it was that sort of mismatch between how much I make versus how much these bricks and mortar actually cost that sort of made me realize, I do not think that if I were to continue the lifestyle that I'm currently living, in the sense of saving for the sake of saving, but not making that money work, I'd be saving until I turned grey, and I probably still wouldn't have a property like to live in. So I think it was that sort of mismatch of expectations versus reality, which really sort of made me, sort of flipped a switch in my head and sort of led me on this journey of looking at other ways to make things work out for you.
Mm.
So Eric, we're now sort of starting to get into the money conversation. So your parents ran an incredible, sort of tight ship, right? Let's face it. You tell us in your backstory notes that they paid off their home in 5 years during the Paul Keating recession that we had to have. Incredible in terms of to be able to get to that, hence working that 18 to 20 hour days. So they arrived in this country with no expectation, no sense of entitlement. They're going to reap what they sow and basically got on with it. Now, did they teach you any money tricks other than just don't spend on any wants at all, just spend on needs? Or did they have a money structure or a banking setup that they taught you? Or where did the conversation around money start and end?
Unfortunately, the answer's not going to surprise you or give you much to go on, but we were that very typical household that you guys talk about in previous episode. It was not something we talked about. Understandable, because they knew how hard it was to make money. I guess their sort of noble nature, they just didn't want us to go through it, which it's fine. It's not something I hold against them, but I sort of do sometimes wish we had some money conversations, but that's how it is. That's how the cookie crumbles. Funnily enough, my mum is sorry to interrupt you there, Ben, but my mum's a very proud cook. So the only thing she did was she would always make this food for us, and then she would show us and go, "This only cost me 38 cents to make," for example. Like, for example, one time we went through the whole sushi phase like everyone. We're paying $2-3 per roll of sushi. Bring it back home, and my mum would sort of take that as a challenge, and she would go, "I reckon I can make that better and cheaper." So she would go out and get stuff from the markets and things like that. She knows where all of the stuff is on sale and where you can get bulk prices and all that. And funny enough, one time she made a whole platter of sushi, and I go, let's calculate how much this actually cost. And we actually calculated it down to the cent. I think it cost about, I can't remember, it was something like 18 or 19 cents per roll it cost us to make.
Yeah.
And then she would put that next to the $3 sushi that I bought, and she'd go, "Well, look, I can make this for a lot cheaper." So it sort of gave me that appreciation.
Do it on bulk, so you can put the stall at the front of the footpath?
we probably could have, like, some sort of modern equivalent of the lemonade stand, a sushi stand instead, with a sort of shelf life.
Engage her to do it at 50 cents, so
50 cents, I know.
She can get some margin herself, and you're also making a profit.
Yeah, we probably could, but that was probably the one sort of thing that made me realize just how much retail markup there was on things. That was probably one of my big takeaways as a kid in terms of any sort of money conversation, if you can even count that as one. But for the most part, to answer your question, there just wasn't any money conversation as kids. Yeah.
Fast forward to today. Do you talk to your mum and dad about money now, and are they retired yet, or are they?
So, not really still.
Yeah. They still can't help but work.
I think in terms of the money conversation, like, we talk about how much things cost, right? But that's probably about it. It's I don't think they've fully pivoted or warmed up to the idea of using leverage to build wealth. Yeah. Whereas for me, I've grown up here. I've sort of I'm a bit more open-minded about it all. I was born in '94, so like I think Bryce mentioned once, I've grown up in economic prosperity. So it's okay to talk about these things. They haven't fully warmed up to the idea of using leverage to build the wealth. So although I do talk about these things to my friends, I probably don't really talk about it to my parents. Okay. And sorry, what was the other question? I missed it.
No, that's all right. It was just whether you do talk about money, into today's society.
And whether they're retired.
Yeah, and whether they're retired.
Right. My dad just recently retired, and my mum's always been a housewife after we were born. So, yeah, they're doing all right. They're doing all right these days. But I just wish they didn't work so hard.
Yeah.
Hey, I am keen to lean into your property investment story, but before we do go there, can you tell us, you got your first pay packet when you got your job? What did money flow look like for you for those first few months, few years, given that you had some scarcity legacy. What systems? How were you operating the money? Was it flowing in? The first couple of pay packets, you blew it on movies and restaurants, or from day one you hoarded it?
I initially hoarded it. I initially was like, nah, not spending $1 on this or $1 on that. But then I don't blame my partner for this, but we started dating. We started, going on weekend trips and, this and that and food and all of that. So, a bit of money was spent there. And then it got to the point where I think rock bottom for me was when money came in and it went out straight away. And I was like, what?
Rock bottom.
I was like, this is it's probably not as bad of a rock bottom as someone who has credit card debt. Keep in mind, I never had any credit card debt. The only debt I have is my HEX.
Yeah.
But I got to the point where I was like, wait, hold on. All of my money's gone. The $1,000 whatever that I made from that two weeks of slogging it out is all gone. So I think that's what really made me go, we probably should readjust our expectations. We're probably living a little above our means. So,
but did you have a budget? What were you?
No, we didn't know. It was all done by intuition. There was no sophistication towards it. There was no visibility. And like Ben says, sometimes the invisible remained visible. We never made it visible. Now that I look back on it, maybe we subconsciously did it to not, acknowledge the underlying problems of how money was being spent.
That's a truth for many households. In terms of, did you start or did you shop around for your first bank, or were you like so many others who had their primary school / secondary school savings account and just stayed there and started parking money into that?
The smile on my face answers your question already, but the listeners can't see it. It is the latter. So instead of the primary school system, my mum said to me, she goes, we already do our banking with CommBank. I'm opening you a CommBank account. Okay. So we went with that way. I mean, admittedly, even to this day, I still use CommBank, but only as my direct payments jar. So yeah, apart from that, I've sort of moved on personally. But yeah, there was no real sophistication to the system. It was all really just done by intuition in the early days. Thankfully it's not that way anymore, but you sort of need somewhere to start to sort of see where you've come.
Well, you talked about the direct payments jar then, so that's obviously some lingo from the Money Smart system. So you've adopted that. We'll chat about that shortly. But when you wrote into us, you talked to us that you got easily influenced by get-rich-quick schemes. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So during my uni years, I studied your typical business and finance degrees. So I always looked for those sort of extracurricular things, so like your business clubs and all of that stuff. And to this day, I do believe that universities are just breeding grounds for some of these highly suggestible schemes. I joined a I won't name them. They're fantastic people. I joined a particular sort of like a, I don't know what they call them, business development blah 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 club, that sort of thing. They used to bring in these. It had a bit of a startup sort of spin to it, but then admittedly they started bringing in these spruikers. These spruikers, like these kind of, I prefer to call them internet marketers, the fake it till you make it types, where they sort of sell you this idea of, you can have the wealth that I have, you can have the Ferrari that I have if you buy this course or something like that. We used to have these guys come in. We didn't pay them for it. And, we were sort of made to feel grateful for it because the guys were giving us our time. And I am. Look, at the end of the day, everyone's busy, right? So it was good that they came. But now looking back on it with a bit of a bit more wisdom, it really was for them to, recruit these people while they were in school, while these people were just getting out into the real world. So I still remember to this day, we had this one guy come in, and I won't name him. I still know who he is, but he came in and he was wearing these, these expensive Bottega $700 loafers and his Armani blazer thing. And he did this.
Was it Ben?
Yeah, right.
$700 loafers.
No, it doesn't quite sound like Ben.
Mine are boat shoes that you can buy for $79.95. Right, let's get
$700 loafers is laughable.
Just add another zero and you have this guy. So, but I remember he did this. He did this experiment about money. I don't know what it was, but he held up a $50 note and he goes to the room and he goes, "Who wants this $50 note?" And all the kids put their hand up because they're all just fresh out of high school and uni. All right. And then I don't know why he did this to this day. He stepped on it. He threw it on the ground and he stepped on it. And then he goes to us, if I were to step on this with my dirty shoe and then spit on it, would you still want it? And no one put their hand up. I don't know what the sort of background of that experiment was, but I just remember it was this sort of ostentatious show of wealth that stuck with me. And I think from that sort of reverence of this image of wealth, a lot of these kids followed him to try and be his what I call like a protégé or whatever it was. So it was very suggestible to me, and my partner remembers as well. I was very suggestible back then, but I think this is where I'm really thankful for some of that scarcity headspace, that because I operated in that scarcity mindset, I never signed up for any of these things. Like I went to some of these internet marketer pitches and where it's sort of like hey, this event's only costs $50. And by the end of it, it goes, if you want more of this, we've got a $2,000 event. But if you want even more, there's a $10,000. I never signed up for a single one of those, apart from just the entry $50 ones, for example. So thankfully, I haven't been pulled away by those spruikers, but I can see how they're very slick. They're very image-based, very smooth talking. They're trained very well to hit the right notes. I can really empathize with those people who fall into these things. And, even with some of the MLM stuff as well, there was a lot of MLM culture in my time at uni. And we really had to avoid it like the plague where we could. It was a very suggestible sort of an echo chamber of these sort of get rich quick schemes, which, as you guys have detailed over the past however many years of podcasts, it just doesn't work.
No, and it's quite an achievement for you to be able to withstand that, because they flick every mental trigger that you can imagine, and they become very immune to the emotion that it has on other people. So for you to be able to withstand that is terrific. So so there's get rich quick schemes, the grooming at uni. So how do you end up listening to the Property Couch?
So going back a couple of steps. My parents did ingrain in me that you had to buy a house at one point in your life for that stability. So going off of that, I looked at myself this year just before pandemic, and I go, look, I'm turning 26, so now I'm now closer to 30 than 20. So it's sort of like that quarter life crisis thing. And I go, all right, look, it's probably time to take life a little more seriously. I had always wanted property. I enjoy property for what it is as well. I love a cozy home, and me and my partner really enjoy staying at this sort of rustic, tiny cottages when we go away for weekends once in a while. So I always enjoyed the idea of a nice cozy home. So I looked into it, and initially, because I'd come off from being suggested to some of these get rich quick schemes, what I did was I went, look, I'm going to look up property investment on government websites and just see what the facts are. And obviously, government websites are only going to tell you the facts of, this is the rule, that's the rule of depreciation, all that. But anyway, like I started looking, and Ben, you're probably going to laugh at this or have a smirk over this, but the first thing that hooked me into property investment was the idea of investing for the sole purpose of tax benefits. The whole depreciation thing, and
you're not alone.
Yeah. So I was one of those listeners who went red-faced when that first came up in the podcast. But anyway,
you'd be amazed, Eric. You'd be amazed on the number of people. I know a little sidebar here, but the amount of people that go and see their tax agent, and they're just interested in how much tax they'll get back.
Yeah,
they're not interested in all the advice around, I think you're overspending here, or that's happening over here, or so for every dollar that you spend and you lose 40 cents, they're interested in trying to get 10 of that 40 back, or 20 of that 40 back.
Once you wrap your head around that analogy that you brought up many, many, many times, like why would you spend $1 to get 30 cents back? It just makes no sense. But anyway, going back to the question, how I found the podcast. So I was reading all these government websites, and I did a bit of, the whole activity being mistaken for accomplishment. I'd go to my bank and get my borrowing capacity, and then go to a few auctions down the road on Saturday morning, that sort of thing. Totally unsophisticated. But I always felt like, look, I don't feel like I'm actually get anything of value out of this. You know, like I'm going to auctions on Saturdays, you know, getting deflected by all the real estate agents with their slick responses. That's not to say I don't like them. I've got a few friends in real estate and they're wonderful people, but they really know how to sort of, you know, knock back the things you ask them. And I just didn't feel like I was going anywhere. So my partner knew I was wanting to take this property investment thing seriously. So she's really good at finding stuff. So she found your first book online and she took advantage of that free book with the $10 postage option. So she ordered that book in and I was at her house one day and she shoved it under my nose. And I looked at the book and I love the way you guys look there. There's nothing about the way you guys look that I don't like, but I just sort of, you know, shoved it away. I was like, no, I'm not interested. Like I don't see the Ferrari, I don't see the jet in the background. You know, it's just two guys sitting on a yellow couch. I'm not interested. Like this
Pretenders.
We'll see how well that's you know, come about. But anyway, so I dismissed it. And then the following week, I think the pandemic and the whole work from home experiment started. So I was like, oh, you know what? I might need some podcasts to listen to while I work. I went and Googled best property investment podcast in Australia. And the first link that came up was of you guys. And I looked at it.
That's lucky.
Yes.
I've seen these
Stig
two
will be happy
smiles
about
somewhere. I have seen these two smiles somewhere. So I went back and I took the book off her. I'm like, you know, came back with my tail in between my legs. I'll take the book, thanks. And, you know, I just listened to the first episode and, you know, you get hooked from there, really. You know, I know you say the first 20, but I would say the first 12 are the really, really made a big difference to me. I mean, it's like what one of your previous guests said. I didn't even know what your business name was until like I had to Google what your business name was. So that's what really made me go.
That's intention, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, and exactly.
We're paying it forward. We're not worried about the business. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's really what I connected with, because I initially found another podcast. I won't name it or name where the person's from, but they purely did that, and they were just continually plugging their business in there. So it's like, you know, it's John from XYZ Proprietary Limited. How you guys doing? And then at the end, follow my company or whatever it was. So I found the podcast through there, and honestly speaking, the rest is history. The work from home experiment. Being able to listen to podcasts per day, and it was, yeah, it just went from there, really. That's how I found you guys.
And in terms of implementing, like, you know, in terms of how you're organizing your money, so one thing that's really good about you, Eric, is you've got visuals on your money and you're conscious and aware of it. And one could also say that you can control it, and you can certainly control your actions around it, which is great. But what about the Money Smart system itself? When you started to get exposed to an idea about a rules-based system, yes, that could help you organise your money a little better and potentially make your money work harder for you, what was your initial reaction?
It probably would turn the podcast into a mature rated with the expletives I used when I realised how great it was. But it's what I was looking for so long, because I wanted, like you said, to make that invisible visible. It was so frustrating for so many years seeing the money go in and then not like on the other side of the tunnel, how come I've only got this much left? So I wanted to shine a light on where my money was going. And I guess I never took it seriously back then, only until this year. Otherwise, you know, I really wish I found the Money Smart system 3-4 years ago. But finding it and then realizing, like, I like to think I'm a little lucky with my timing, because by the time I was really picking up the Money Smart system, it was available on the website where you just put the numbers in. I thought, oh, this is just way too easy. But it was really good. I mean, I actually went and bought a physical copy of your second book, because I work better with the physical instruction manual in front of me. And what I did, I spent a weekend, had my coffee, had the book out, and just reshuffled everything, and I've never looked back. It's been amazing. And once again, quoting yourselves once again, the money is simple, the behavior is the hardest part of it. And the great thing about the Money Smart system, which I think it's a little hard to materialize over an audio podcast, is when you have that rules-based system, what it allows you to do is not only see the visuals, it allows you to have that instant feedback loop. when you're, at the shops and you're thinking, whether you want to go for, a bit of extra this and that, or some ice cream or whatever, and you go, oh, well, my float's only this much per week and I need to make it last for this many days. It's that feeling of guilt that stops me from the slippage now. Whereas before it was, it'll be all right. She'll be all right. You won't see it. It's all good. Everything's all right. As long as the number at the end of the month isn't red, it's all good. But now it's more taking control of that and sort of reining in some of those bad money habits as well. So it's twofold for me, the benefits.
You're a perfect case study for it too, Eric, because it actually brings out the best of both worlds for you, because you can implement all of the conditioning, all of the observations that you made as a kid, which means that you make every dollar count. And then you can allow abundance through the freedom of the float, because if you've got the house in order in everything else, then you know that you have your 7-day float, which is your ability to be free, not have to be accountable on that. If I've got the money, I can spend it. If I don't have the money, I can't get the ice cream.
Yes.
You're probably the perfect marriage for making it work, because it is a rules-based system which you would love, but it also gives you freedom to live life as well.
100%. It works perfectly with a transition from, battening down the hatches all the time to sort of loosening it up a little in my mind, and then transposing that onto a system, into numbers, into a very rigid rules-based system. Like you guys say, the numbers do not lie, right? And like the guest from last week, who was amazing as well, I am still adjusting my float at the moment. So it's really good in the sense that you can set up your expenses and do the damage the first time, and look at yourself in the mirror and go, gee, do I really cost this much per year? That sort of thing. And then tweaking it a little, and then running the system for a month or two and seeing where you land. And I've done that for a few months now, and I just did another retweak on my monthly checkup. So what I do is I just set an Outlook reminder for the first of every month, and that is all I need to do. Although for people who are better at it, it is 10 minutes a month. I'm probably not that smart, or probably not too bright, so it probably takes me about an hour. But simply because I love to pour through all the details and just sort of adjust. I'm still in the adjustment phase. I think once I'm good, the monthly time commitment will probably come down.
Well, I mean, most of the calculations are done in the platform, so the tweaking you're doing is about how you may want to organise your direct debits, or paying on credit card, or and as you say, working out that float. But yes, once you're in a steady state, that is where you're basically grabbing the two statements, the primary account statement and the credit card statement, and you're checking through that for provisional spend and making sure there's no spending on there that shouldn't be on there, and then you get the balances in the system, and it does all the calculation for you. So I think from that point of view, it's going to be, as you get more and more confident with the system, that time will definitely come down. So one of the things for me, I mean, at the end of the day, any money management system and rules-based system is great, but what's the end game for you, Eric? I mean, ultimately what Bryce and I, and this whole idea of money transformation and financial transformation isn't about the money. It's about what the money gives you. I mean, your parents made an unbelievable sacrifice to give you that opportunity to come to, they came to Australia, foreign land, probably didn't even speak the language, learn how to do that, learn how to integrate into society, have been a success story because of hard work, nothing else other than hard work and sacrifice. They've come in here. Now you've got an opportunity to craft the journey and the lifestyle that you want to craft with your partner. What are the big rocks in the jar? What are the things that are important to you? Because ultimately that's what money is there for. It's not for money's sake.
I agree 100%. You took the words out of my mouth there. And that was another paradigm shift for me. Initially it was money for the sake of money. Now it's more like money is now a tool. It is something that you use to achieve what you want. To answer your question, there are a few things. One thing I did not put in my initial letter to you guys was I'm a car enthusiast. So that is the defining theme of my life. I have loved automobiles for as far as I can remember. So cars is a pivotal part of my life. And a lot of what I want to do is to be able to just tinker away on cars in my garage. So that's something I do want long term. I just want to be able to enjoy my cars through that. But in terms of more, I guess, altruistically in others, through my parents' sacrifice, I guess mainly through switching up to an abundance mindset, I'm just so thankful that they chose Australia over any other country. This is the luckiest country in the world. And people just don't realize that sometimes. It frustrates me when I see people around me, my age, complain about the government not giving them enough money or something like that. And I'm like, you do not realize how lucky you are just to be here, just to have that Australian passport, right? So for me, the main thing that I want is to be able to pass that on to my kids in the future. Like, I want them to have that Australian upbringing. It is amazing because we have this conversation with my parents sometimes. Like, now that they've loosened up a little, even they sometimes realize to themselves and to us that, I'm so thankful we chose Australia over the US, for example, because, we say this sometimes to each other. We very likely could have grown up in a shoebox apartment in some overpopulated city in Asia and never stepped on a patch of grass, right? But we're over here in Australia. We've got that empty island syndrome that you guys talk about, a population of 25 million for a land size that's probably equal to the States and some of the lowest population density in the world. Food is so abundant. The wealth is incredible. It is, we have everything to be grateful for to, pass on that lifestyle to our next generation. Because ultimately, for me, I don't see the point of doing anything in our lives, working away long hours. I don't see the point of doing anything that we do in our lives if there's no one to give it to, if there's no one to, share it with. I think Bryce mentioned it once. You don't want to be like Donald Trump, the guy, the one guy at the golf course who has burned every business bridge ever and now political bridge. You don't want to be like him. He's almost 80 and he's got no one to share his abundance with. I think materially, if you look at the numbers, that's great. He's 7-8 digits, but in terms of personal enlightenment, and just, we're social creatures. We need to be around each other. It's just it's not a win for me to be like that. So I think the property couch, the main thing that has taught me is to just be more mindful, and it's worked very well with my rocks in the jar. It really made me question what my end game was, because initially. And again, I do apologize if I'm waffling on, but initially, before I picked up the property couch, I did think that, who dies with the most property does win. And then after, when I started listening to the podcast, and I hope you guys don't mind mentioning, I did get a plan done with Damien from your office. We realized that we really didn't need that many to achieve what we wanted. It's like that minimum effective dose sort of thing. It's just, why go more if you don't need to?
Eric, it depends. It depends which path you want to go down. If you want to go down a lifestyle design path, or if you want to go down a status design path. And what most people, he who dies with the most property wins, is a status design path.
Correct.
Because what it does is means that you can puff your chest out, you can lift yourself up the status ladder or perceived status ladder, and have people, in your view, give you an external validation of yourself, rather than the people who are on lifestyle design, which is, well, this is what I want to do with my time. This is how much it's going to cost to fund what I want to do with my time. So therefore, here's the plan on what I need to do to do that. So
I am the whole status thing. No, that's not my cup of tea. It really just doesn't sit well with me. For me, it is going to be that lifestyle design pivot. Like I mentioned before, I'm a car enthusiast. I just want time and money to work on my cars. That's really all it is.
We know our community, Eric, and our community isn't looking for that get-rich-quick scheme. They're in the wrong environment. If you're listening to this podcast about how to, risk it all, try and take it on to try and retire yesterday and all of that, we're not your podcast. We're not your community. And unfortunately, there are people out there who are sort of, I suppose, enticed into this whole idea. One, it's really easy, and two, it happens really quickly. But then all of a sudden it's like, but you've got to give me a lot of money for me to tell you your secrets. Like, that is not us. We are here about transforming the money habits and the financial habits of people, so they can build their wealthier tomorrows, whatever that looks like. So if that means you get your 3 cars to tinker with in the garage, and your partner gets that annual holiday a year, and that's the win-win in terms of your design of your lifestyle.
Yeah,
that's true, and that's probably the final question for me is around in going through that exercise and that journey of plan to become what you plan to become, making the invisible visible. Where does that put your comfort levels? How do you feel about that, and what have you realized through going through that journey?
Initially, it wasn't too comfortable. I had to, sort of attack these preconditionings from growing up head on, really. And in doing the plan, it really brought out questions about, how many kids do you want to have, that sort of thing. And it was just like, I don't know, that sort of thing. So it really
three kids becomes two very quickly in those discussions, I've got to say.
Once they see the cost and the models, it does certainly that brings in birth control a little bit.
Sorry, Ben, do you mind just repeating the question quickly? I got sidetracked.
No, that's all right. It is about, you've taken it upon yourself to get some professional guidance because you had a block in your mindset. And that block is very natural for people who have come from that mindset. I've told my story, and I'll tell it again. My household was very similar, about a hardworking family who didn't spend a lot, but that allowed them to retire early with their property in the bush, and they paid off their home quickly. Dad still did some share investing and some property investing, and what I also noticed in terms of what they did is when they rushed into something and it wasn't well thought out, or if it was the next big thing, they lost money. So, but I grew up in a household that basically, every dollar was hard won, and needs versus wants was a thing, right? And so I had to reprogram myself in terms of there's got to be a better way. I've got to get educated, and I've spent my life journey in terms of learning about what does great money management look like, and in my view, what does long-term sustainable investing look like. And that comes back down to very solid cash flow modeling and planning. Because if you keep sort of deviating and pivoting and doing all the silly things, you just are constantly not getting the best energy of moving forward. So you've identified that, you've had the roadblock. You said it was really challenging early, but you've gone through that exercise to get some professional help. And when you got your plan delivered, and you now know a pathway forward, and it's not a guaranteed pathway because it's a long-term program, but when you walked away with this concept of a tangible plan, tell me about how that made you feel, and how committed to have you become in terms of trying to get there.
I felt extremely empowered. So, but thank you for actually reminding me. This is what I really wanted to get out to your listeners, was getting that professional help. It doesn't matter how good you think you are. I thought I was okay, but getting that professional help, it doesn't have to be from your business. It can be for anyone as long as they've got the right, accreditation and etc.
Or they've got you at the center of the universe.
Correct. And
not their agenda at the center of the universe. Yeah.
But what it was, and this is probably going to be my takeaway message for today, it gave me two things. And these two words were just so life-changing. Like, it was life-changing for me, and I'm not trying to hype it up, but it gave me a time and a target. That's all it was. Getting that plan, it wasn't necessarily, getting all the big fancy words and fancy graphs and all of that. It was like, I don't know, it was like 100 pages or something like that. But the message I took away from that is, I now know deeply in myself, with this, I now have a time and I have a target. And if your listeners are interested, we are planning on getting that first IP around this time next year. And that is more motivation than any seminar, than any podcast episode from anyone, any book, any educational material could ever give me. But on top of that, if I could add one more comment, is that what has been incredibly helpful, not only the podcast, the Money Smart system, getting a plan done, getting help, the most helpful thing to me is, and this is a really good analogy. It's admittedly, it's not my analogy, but I got it from the Abundance Code, that book from Julianne Cairns. Was imagine you are at a train station and it's 5 o'clock, and it's, you imagine you're at Flinders Street Station for us guys in Melbourne, and it's 5 o'clock, and rush hour, everyone's trying to get home. you see all these people getting on trains, and if you allow yourself to get caught up, you'll just jump on any train and just hope it goes where you want. But if you take a step back and try to not allow these emotions, this FOMO, to play with your emotions, you take a step back, you get advice, you might go up to the help desk, or you might grab a timetable and you look and you ask for help, and you find out which line you need to be on to get home. And from there, you will know you're not just going to jump on any train and hope it takes you where you need to go. You're going to wait for the right train. And even though you see 1,000 people getting on this train, you know that train's not for you. You're going to wait for the next one that's your train. And I think through all of the podcasts, the Money Smart system, the books, and getting a plan done, that has allowed me to look at my emotions from a third-party perspective and go, I'm not going to rush out and buy an IP because the government's offering stamp duty concessions and because there's now a boom post-COVID. I'm not going to touch that because I know my cash flows do not allow me to buy an IP at the moment, because I don't plan on selling. There is no point in holding it for 1 or 2 years. Your exit costs are going to kill any equity growth. So for me, that was the most important thing, was just with all of the things combined together, just to be able to know which train to get on and not to get on a train simply because everyone else is getting on it. And that's the biggest takeaway, in addition to having a time and a target from getting help. Like, that has been so valuable to me. And, it's worth more than its, what's the saying, worth more than its weight in parts or something like that. It's
Weight in gold.
That's the one. Yeah.
Some of the parts is great.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and because of that, I your analogy being, Bob at the barbecue. Yeah, I might have mates at a barbecue saying they bought this and they bought that. Doesn't matter to me, because that's not for me. That's for them. I've got a different set of circumstances. I will buy my investment property when my cash flows allow, and with getting some help from some very smart people, I've got my time and my target, and I'm sticking to that.
Eric, that seems like a really wonderful place to wrap up this conversation. That analogy was fabulous. I think everyone who's listening to that could imagine it. And I think you, Ben, can I just remind you, we've been talking to a 26-year-old for 45. Like, I have to look down at the paper and go, yep, he said he was 26, because you're an old soul. You've been, you've got wisdom that is remarkable. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, but I remember before we pushed record, you sort of were very humble. Oh, I'm not sure my story has got anything in it that I can assure you. There will be people listening to this who have, whether it's the backstory of your parents, whether it's the way that you approach the money, whether it's the wisdom that you've been imparting, whether it's that final analogy that you just shared with us, and of course, breaking it down and distilling it down to two things: time and target. That's a wonderful thing. So Eric, Ben and I appreciate that you've taken the time to share your story. I say it every time. It's brave, it's courageous for people to open up the vault and let us have a little look behind the curtain to see what's going on. You did that really, really well. And on behalf of us, thanks for joining us on the couch today.
Thank you so much. I do feel like that man in the arena, according to what was her name, Brene Brown.
Franklin Roosevelt. She
got that's his quote. Yeah, it was in a book. Yeah, no, thank you for allowing me to share my story. It was, like you said, I did have doubts. I probably still do, to be honest. But if I can help one person pull their head out of the sand and get a grip on their situation, I think it's time well spent.
Yeah, well said. So there you go. Thanks again for joining us on the couch.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Time and target, Bryce.
Time and target.
Time and
which train are you going to get on? Which train are you going to get on at Flinders Station, Ben? Are you in the lifestyle design business or the status design business? What car do you like? Like, I said it at the end of the interview. I'm going to say it again now. 26. My goodness.
A man with a plan.
Yes.
A man with a plan. And his partner,
Shelley.
Shelley.
We got to meet her before at the very beginning. What an incredible woman she is. But hey, Ben, can you remember the first time you went to the movies?
Oh, I think we went to a drive-in, which was Star Wars. So I would have been maybe
Return of
8.
the Jedi. I know you're a bit older than me. You probably got Star Wars. My first
Star
one was roughly 82.
Yeah.
1982, 1981. Star Wars: Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
So, but Eric, 19, first time at the movies.
First time to a restaurant.
First time to a restaurant. How's
So-
felt guilty someone else taking away the dishes?
But no real sort of like what's fascinating, really comfortable with the lifestyle and design that he's doing, right? Not like hasn't felt like he's missed out in a lot of respects. Been very, very humbling to listen to someone who hasn't had those life's luxuries, and the parents who have also made that incredible sacrifice. Oh, geez. Ooh, wow. Lots to take away from that one.
There's some things that we are privileged in our position to be in, Ben, and one of those is being in a position to have conversations with human beings like that. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I certainly saw a lot of wisdom. And what's interesting is his partner took up the call to get a free book from us, Ben. If you're prepared to pay the postage, we'll send you out a free book. So that offer is still available. If you want a free book, go to thearmchairguide.com.au, because you could be Eric's partner, Shelley, who takes that up, hands it over to your version of Eric, and then all of a sudden transformation opens up to you. So that was a lot of fun.
I mean, let's come back to, you were saying the other, I know what I know. I want to know what you know. He's put his hand up and said, I know what I know. Now I know that there's more to know, and I'm getting advice just clever.
Eric, we appreciate you coming on, contributing to the Property Couch Summer Series. I think that was a real winner of a conversation. And if you think that the conversations we have had to this point, Ben, have been great, I can assure you, with a couple of weeks to go, there are some remarkable stories, and I'm not just fluffing pillows here. There are some great stories in our remaining parts of our summer series, so you should stick around for that. But Ben, until next week.
Knowledge is empowering, Bryce, but only if you act on it.
Well said. See you next week, folks. Hey there, folks. Bryce here again, hoping that you're enjoying each and every one of these amazing transformation stories on the summer series. Now, I just want to remind you that these transformations are available for you too. All you need to do is go to thepropertycouch.com.au/summer series, and there you'll be able to download a free copy of our best-selling book, Make Money Simple Again, which is the instruction manual on how to implement Money Smarts. And you'll also have instructions on how to use our free My Wealth portal that brings it all together and shows you how to implement this money transformation in your life. So I certainly want to encourage you to do that. Now, 2021, we plan to be the best year we've ever had on the podcast, and so we want to hear from you. So if you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/summer series, there is a survey that you can fill out and let us know the guests, the topics, the ideas, anything that you want to hear talked about on the Property Couch. We certainly want to hear from you. So that's thepropertycouch.com.au/summer series. And if you complete that, you'll go into the draw to win a $500 voucher with select residential property for you to use on any research product of your choice. So I'd certainly want to encourage you to fill that out. And just a little reminder that nothing we have talked about on any of these podcasts constitutes financial advice. Of course, you should consult your suitably qualified financial advisor to help you talk about your unique circumstances. Now, folks, I want to encourage you to go to thepropertycouch.com.au/summer series.